The Progressive Conservatives are taking a hard line on vaccinations in Nova Scotia. On Tuesday, they proposed an amendment to the Health Protection Act that would require children entering the public school system to have proof of their vaccinations.
There's been a lot of talk all over the country about the importance of immunizations in both children and adults. So here with everything that we need to know is Dr. Yoni Freedhoff. Dr. Yoni, welcome back.
Thank you.
This is a huge issue, as we've established. So let's start with what you want to say to people who ask if vaccines are safe. Say it to the camera, right down the barrel.
So if there's one thing to remember about vaccinations, it's that they are safe. And I think the price we pay for having eradicated vaccine-preventable diseases for the most part is forgetting the terror and the horror that was associated with them before. And if you want to revisit that, however briefly, take a stroll through an old cemetery and have a look at the graves of families where multiple children in many cases were buried as a consequence of diseases that we have gotten rid of. So they are safe. They are checked at every step of the way, from pre-production to post-market surveillance. Health Canada and physicians are monitoring for safety constantly.
I'm going to applaud that.
Yes, yes, you are. Yes, you are. Now, I've seen on social media some people posting the long list of ingredients that are in vaccines as though that somehow proves that they're unsafe because there are things in those ingredients that maybe they can't pronounce, they don't know what they are. So tell us, what are in vaccines?
Well, so first, don't get medical information from Instagram.
Yes.
But second, as far as ingredients goes, if you look at fruits and vegetables, they have hundreds of chemical ingredients. So this idea about ingredients is just, it's part of the natural fallacy. It's not important. What's in a vaccine? We have an antigen. That's what the body responds to, and that's how we develop our immunity. We have adjuvants, which allow the body to have a better immune response. We have preservatives, so that the vaccine stays safe, and this is the mainstay of what we see in our vaccines today.
Okay, so address, are there any potential health complications as a result of getting the vaccine? And if so, what are the likelihood of developing?
So with all vaccines, you can have an immune response. So you might have a headache, you might have a low-grade fever, you might have a sore arm. With some of the live vaccines, which are the minority of them, you can get a slightly more vigorous reaction. And in really rare cases, 1 in a million, you can have a strong allergic reaction. Now, we administer vaccines in doctors' offices, in pharmacies, in specialized clinics, where treatment for that really rare 1 in a million emergency is always on hand.
Blaze goes to summer camp, and excuse me, Dr. Yoni, they have, medical information that they require, and that had me getting out her vaccination card. And that had me thinking about my vaccination card, because like many people, we got vaccinations as kids. Should we be looking into that? Do we need to be getting tested later on in life?
So some vaccines we do boost. So the recommendation, for instance, for tetanus and diphtheria is to boost that every decade or so. Flu shots we recommend annually. And then some get a little more complicated, like the MMR shot. If you're born between 1970 and 1996, you may have only received 1 shot, whereas nowadays we boost with a follow-up shot. And so the recommendation for those folks is they can go to their doctor's offices, they can have their blood tested to see their titers, to see their immunity, or they can simply get boosted again, which is what I chose to do last year.
I'm just going to jump in. MMR is measles?
Measles, mumps, rubella. I'm sorry.
Okay, great.
Okay, let's talk about the timing of vaccinations. We know when you have really little kids, there's a routine and a schedule that your physician will give you. So, and in some schools, they get really particular about that, if it's too soon or too late. So why are the dates, the actual timing of these vaccinations so important, especially for kids?
So the timing is set up to try to maximize immune response. And as far as the schools go, they need to rely on something to determine whether someone has had their vaccines in time or not. And so in schools, if you have not, yes, you can become suspended. But of course, you're allowed to be readmitted to school once there's proof of vaccination.
Okay.
In Ontario, there are 3 vaccines administered to grade 7 students. There are meningococcal
vaccine,
hepatitis B, and HPV. So I want to focus on the HPV vaccine. Why is it important for both boys and girls to be getting it?
So it's hugely important because the HPV vaccine protects against HPV, which in turn causes cancers. 600,000 cancers a year, including 250,000 deaths, are consequent to HPV. So this is a very important vaccine. HPV infections can lead to cancers in the vulva, the cervix, and the vagina, or the anus, but also oral mucosa, and so the throat and the mouth. And so it's important for both boys and girls because boys and girls can develop cancers consequent to HPV. And just because you're a boy doesn't mean you can't get anal cancer or oral cancer or spread it to your partners.
Yeah, that's an excellent. If you're an adult and you missed getting the HPV vaccine while you're in school, should you talk to your doctor about getting it? And is there a cutoff age for getting it?
So it would seem that HPV infection is less risky, it's less commonplace beyond the age of 40. But
Okay.
some countries do recommend vaccination up to the age of 45. For instance, Australia does that. A friend of mine, who I know was on the show, Dr. Jen Gunter, she says that for adults, the adult that it is most important to consider the HPV vaccine is a woman over the age of 26 who has not had chlamydia and who has had 3 or fewer sexual partners.
Okay.
In 2018, Dr. Yoni, more than 130,000 Canadians developed shingles. My sister was one of them. Canadian researchers have said that both here and in the U.S., there hasn't been an increase in cases among adults. Why is this?
So shingles, it's a disease that only people who've had chickenpox can get. Because what happens is the virus lays dormant, it lays sleeping basically in a nerve root. And then depending on the nerve root, it can cause real problems from chronic long-standing pain to even disability if it's on an eye, for instance. Now, as far as why we're seeing more of it, it's not 100% certain, but we think maybe it has to do with the success of the chickenpox vaccinations. In that before those vaccinations, we were all, as adults and people who've had chickenpox, exposed to some low level of chickenpox in sort of the air. But that boosted our immunity. We don't have that anymore, so that might be why we're seeing a resurgence or an increase in the number of shingles cases.
We're coming up to flu season. I got the flu shot for the first time last year. It's because it's because my ma and I see the same doctor, and my ma is immune compromised. So the doctor was like, I need you to be vaccinated so I can look after your ma. So it worked on me, but what is the efficacy rate?
So efficacy varies season by season. So the flu shot is a best guess of the World Health Organization and the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, trying to guess on the basis of flu patterns what will be the ones that are prevalent in the following season, because there are many different flus. Some years they get it more right than other years. But even in the years where they did not guess properly, we know that the vaccine helps to prevent some of the illness in society. And so as far as flu vaccination goes, yes, it's for ourselves, but you're right, it's for the people who can't be vaccinated, the very young, the very old, and the immunocompromised. And if you think flu does not matter, is not a big deal, you might be surprised to learn last year, in North America alone, there were 81,000 flu deaths.
Wow. Wow. Let's just leave it right on that and think about that. Thank you so much for this important information, Dr. Yoni. We always love having you here. We will have everything that we talked about today up on our website after the show. We'll be right back.